Hello, silly people, and welcome back to the channel, where today is the finale of Vasilisa Baba Yaga project for this year. And this was just the drawing stage, and we're going to, later in this video, finish up with a color comp for wrapping this up. But first, let's talk about how we got here and most of the steps that we did throughout this whole process. So this was the initial sketch of Vasilisa BabaYaga, which is a Slavic Russian tale of the lost girl Vasilisa the Beautiful meeting the witch BabaYaga and then wanting to eventually escape from her house. And a doll that her mother, her deceased mother, gave her, tells her how to escape. And so taking one of the skull torches, she flees from the witch. That is a very brief synopsis of the story. And so we have Vasilisa running with the skull torch away, back home, with Baba Yaga in pursuit, her chicken-legged house, which is just bizarre and very interesting, and her three riders, the three riders being the morning sun, the noonday sun, and what I'm calling Mr. Midnight on a dark stag. And that was the concept. And so I started with this very brief sketch, and it's going to be a diptych, which is two paintings split, but making one image, but each can operate on their own. And so from here, I made a blue line sketch, a little bit more refined. We have again the dividing tree, Vasilisa, skull torch, running away or back home, the riders, morning, noon, and Mr. Midnight with Baba Yaga and her chicken-legged house behind her in pursuit. And then I did it again, more developed. So this is all iteration. Illustration is much more iterative than it seems. So again, the same subject matter, diptych, just a little bit more refined, especially in these background elements. And then from there, we went to a comp. And this was my initial comp, and it has a very loose, sketchy background, but a more developed characters. And this was one of the earlier forms that I wanted to bring to a much more developed area. So we went from here. So these are the elements that we have now for the characters. The characters needed a lot of work, a lot of work. So I made a one sheet and developed that on computer, which is I just took all the disparate images, the single characters, put them on one sheet, print it out, and then draw on top of that to develop the characters. And I'm doing it in this whole thing. I want to be a watercolor painting but using Russian lacquer, which is some beautiful illustrative work on boxes, small images that I had never even heard of before, but I loved the style and wanted to try that out. And so I'm developing the characters within those style parameters. So we have Vasilisa, her skull torch. We have Baba Yaga in pursuit, but from an earlier one, she looked just like a witch, but I wasn't really feeling that. So I made her slightly more menacing with a lot of hair, and her overall silhouette feels very phantom-y, skull-like. Her chicken-legged house, the skull fence. We have in the far background the morning sun, the noonday sun, and Mr. Midnight running alongside, and a tree, which I'm calling the claw tree, trying to grasp at Vasilisa and her doll, which kind of mirrors that Baba Yaga is touching a tree or pushing over a tree. So after all that work, I had found an earlier version of a black and white. And so this was a value study that I did a long time ago, and I totally forgot that I did this. But this value sketch is trying to give the impression or indication of the values. Overall, in the painting, this is going to be the sun coming up, and so it has a bluish, it's transitioning from night to early dawn, and then we go to a bluish to red, as I'm still playing with the noon sun either being this side or this side, but him being in red and giving off that color of red all in this area, while Mr. Midnight represents the night, and with him bringing the nighttime. And so purples and that transitioning into that red. But this is a basic value sketch to try to figure that out. And I had made, some amendments with certain things, like didn't have the chicken house fleshed out, so I just put some impression of that. But still, Baba Yaga, Vasilisa with her skull torch, Mr. Midnight riding by, and two suns. So all the elements were there. I just wanted to play with it. But I like how this, in a value sketch, right, that this is eye beams or eye light coming out, giving the effect of, light coming out from the skull, being the skull lantern, skull torch. And the darkest part being this tree that divides the two diptychs. Also parts of the claw tree, what I would call the claw tree, grasping at Vasilisa's dress. But yeah, this was an earlier value sketch that I forgot that I had done. But I think it came out pretty well. So, and the value sketches always help with in the painting, because this is helping to figure out how deep the darks are, where the light sources are. And today we're going to be doing a mock color of this whole thing, just to get an idea of where I want to take it for the next phase, which will happen next year, where I hope to paint it in watercolor. But today I just want a mock-up. So I have my image. Well, I'm using Clip Studio Paint. I think I paint better in this program than Photoshop, but I don't paint excellently in either one of those. So I'm just, me and digital coloring isn't, I'm still very, very new to it. So, but this is just going to be a mock-up, so it shouldn't be anything too fancy. Okay. So I have my file open, and it's on this one layer, and underneath I'll have my colors, or I can go over. I don't think it really matters. And we'll call this, I'll try to keep my levels fairly simple. I usually do a three layer structure, which is probably what I'm gonna do for this one. So we'll do this one as main colors. And so I usually start with a neutral background, because I like to think about the contrast of darkness and light, which is usually how I paint traditionally. So if we have a gray color, a neutral, and okay. Or maybe a little bit darker. Okay. And so in traditional paint, like say acrylic or oils, a neutral background, whether warm or cool, and then you're pressing darkness and light. Where areas where you need more darkness, you push that, and areas that need more light, you push that. And in the end, you usually come up with a final piece. So I mostly use the colors, and I usually use dense watercolor to start, just to block in, and then I use other things later on. But dense watercolor, and then I go through different colors and whatnot. Where to start? Where to start? All right, so here is where we'll leave it. But this was a color comp, and so far, not bad, not bad. So next we're gonna take it up to do watercolor test and whatnot. And plus I need to plus the drawings and the backgrounds. But overall, this whole process was to get this to a place where I could see it, where I could see a final. And I can see a final, which is great. So thank you for joining me on this on this odyssey of Vasilisa, BabaYaga. We went through just the thumbnail, drawing, develop characters, put it all together, and then do a quick color sketch just to figure out where we could go. So next year we'll be doing the watercolor and all that. But thank you for joining me. Take care, keep shining, power to the creator, and I will see you on the next video. And bye-bye.